Everybody, welcome to another episode of Windshield Time, the podcast where we help you use your windshield time to turn learning into earning. My name is Chris Elmore. I am the host, and I am joined by none other than Harold James Walker Jr., who we also call J-Dub. Windshield Time, and both James and I are brought to you by Service Excellence. James, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. I'm sad that we're not in the same room today, Chris.
I am sad too, but I am glad
dynamic.
About this. I'm glad about this, though.
Yeah. You can mute me?
I just muted you. Now, I don't know if everybody else can still hear you, but I can't hear a word you're saying now. So that's awesome to me.
That's great.
So
that's awesome.
Alex, tell me, is everybody else hearing James and I'm the only one that's not hearing him now?
1, 2.
I would imagine I'm the only one not hearing him. Okay, that's a good world to live in.
Everybody hears me
I love
but
you, brother. You know that. But hey, it's good to be able to control you.
It's a story of my life. All you're doing is controlling yourself.
Alex, did we install the electric shock thing that we talked about? Oh, that's right. It's in the chair I think you're sitting in now, Alex. Sorry. So, J-Dub, how the heck are you? I wish you were here with me, but...
Oh, man, me too. I miss being there with you, but I just had a good graduation of my oldest from high school. So we sat through a 2-hour convocation. Is that what they call it nowadays? And that's pretty good.
Is a convocation a graduation?
I don't know. I just said convocation because it sounds important. Could be wrong.
Okay. So you just... Oh, wait a minute. You just peeled back the veil a little bit.
It's just
slightly. And you said a big word because you thought it sounded important. So now we know your secret.
You're the easiest person to do that to. I just throw out words. None of them even have contextual basis.
Where was
and you're
the
like,
mute
oh,
button?
geez, you're smart.
Okay, there you go. I don't know what you're saying now. So, but no, that's great. Keller, your mini-me, has graduated. And he heads off to...
Arkansas, heading to Arkansas Sioux Pigs in August.
Do they have a hand thing like Baylor and the rest of them do?
They do like, whoa. Oh, crap. I suck now. I forget. Sioux Pigs or something. Sioux Pigs. Flat top truck. I believe is what it is.
Flat top truck. There you go.
That's what they've got.
Well, that's awesome.
So we got that. Speaking of flat top truck, I picked up a little truck because it was time for my 16-year-old to get the car from my son, who got the car from me. So I got a truck. So I could be. So
we're calling a full-size Chevy Silverado 4-door a little truck now.
A little truck, full size.
Is it Lil?
Lil. That's what I call it.
It's L-I''L truck.
Yeah, something like that. Lil.
Okay, gotcha.
Little truck.
Gotcha.
So that's where we had a good weekend, good Memorial Day. What about you guys?
I'll speak for Alex. He's doing great. But I did the Murph workout on Memorial Day, and some of you listening might know what that is. I'm not going to go into details, but it's a workout done every Memorial Day by a lot of different types of gyms, CrossFit gyms, functional fitness gyms, all that stuff, and some individuals. But it's what we call a hero WOD, and it's named after Lieutenant Commander Michael Murphy. He was a Navy SEAL, and the movie Lone Survivor, he was played by Taylor Kitsch.
Mm-hmm.
He was played by Taylor Kitsch, and he's the one that, spoiler alert, went to the higher ground, I think is how it played out. I'm oversimplifying, and it is not doing his memory any honor, what I'm saying right now, but he was the one that got to higher ground and made the call to attempt to save
medevac,
his guys. And Marcus Luttrell, who was played by Wahlberg, was the only one that made it out. So he used to do this workout, I guess when he was on deployment, when he was home, whatever, but it was always a 1 mile run, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 air squats, and another 1 mile run, all while wearing his body armor, which was about 20 pounds. And so now that's becomes the Memorial Day workout, and I've done it several times over the years, but I actually trained for it this year, so I'd get a really good time, and So it was fun.
Nice.
I have to make some amends from a previous podcast.
I'm intrigued.
So a shout out to Jesse Olson and Dave
Yes.
at the Happy Outlet. They're regular, loyal listeners, great friends, and he was giving me crap because I didn't know Ohm's Law, and I said something on a podcast that I didn't know Ohm's Law, which you know Ohm's Law, right?
Well, sure. To be fair, you say a ton of stuff on the podcast. You have no idea what you're talking about. So I don't know why he specifically
Sometimes
picked
true,
that
yes. I own that, yes. But thank you for pointing it out. So, do you know what Ohm's Law is?
Not anymore. I did when you brought it up a couple of months back.
I didn't give you time to Google it this time, right?
Yeah, right. I'm furiously typing.
Anyway, Ohm's Law, you can figure out E equals I times R, voltage, amperage, resistance. Okay, and it's an algebra equation that you can move around, right?
Okay.
And so, but when we were talking about, I don't know what the context was. We were just joking around, I'm sure, whatever. But just, Jesse, I know what Ohm's Law is because it came up today in a conversation I was having with another client of ours and good friend of mine, Kelvin Rogers, AirServe Fort Worth. And he came across this electrical problem that was intriguing. And I said, it's like Ohm's Law. E equals I times R. So if you want to figure out I, which is amperage, then you have R divided by E. So I equals R divided by E.
Oh, excuse me.
Are
Were
you
you still talking?
Alex,
Yeah,
don't insert crickets there no matter how many times James texts you. So anyway, it was just cool to dust that off and figure out that that electrical problem was due to a drop in voltage because I knew Ohm's Law. And he confirmed after testing that that's what it was. And yeah, it was just cool. So I just want to set the record straight.
Randomly enough, the podcast topic today is getting really technical with people who don't really care that much about technical conversation, right?
No,
that's not the podcast. Okay,
that's not the
never
podcast
mind. It
topic.
should be. We need to do that at some point.
Okay, we will do that.
I apologize. That was a great story.
In an upcoming episode. Anyway, I just want to set the record straight. I know what Ohm's Law is. Alex, do you know what Ohm's Law is? He does now. See?
Yeah.
See, this podcast has already served its purpose.
Yes.
Right? Wait till I get going.
Wait till I get going.
So what we're going to talk about today, today's topic,
when death is on the line.
And I didn't tease it in the cold open, but
no, you didn't.
Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Leave it alone, James. Leave it alone, James. Today's topic is maintaining our standards during the busy season. Okay.
Ooh,
so right now, while my electricians and plumbers are rolling their eyes, we're going to talk about HVAC again. Look, busy seasons come around for different reasons. I don't think it's a secret that HVAC people get really busy in the summer and really busy in the winter, depending on the location. Well, plumbers get really busy too, different times of the year, right?
Sure.
Okay. Electricians can get busy during different times of the year.
Lose the seasonality. If your phone's ringing and you're down a man,
absolutely.
You're
busy.
Right? So.
Yep. Whatever the word season means, okay, it means a time where the call volume has increased beyond normal everyday capacity. That's what we mean by busy season here. Okay.
Right.
So it doesn't necessarily have to do with weather. HVAC affects it that way. But like you said, you could be a tech down. You could have just launched a new marketing campaign that's causing the phones to ring off the hook, whatever.
Yeah. That's an anachronism.
There's a phrase that not a lot of people know, James. The hook. What's the hook?
The hook. Man, the hook was the cradle within which the handset used to it would hang up if it went down on this little spring, right? I have a tough time actually educating people on what a telephone actually was.
Yeah. And I also think that, but also one of those, what did you say? Anachronism?
Anachronism.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
So the other thing is when people mind being on the phone like this.
Right.
Who does that anymore? I mean,
nobody.
you got to be
everybody over the age of 40.
Yeah, I mean, if you said if you one of your kids walked by and you went, what would they
Call me.
think?
They would think that I
Why
was
is
trying to be
dad
cool. Like, yo.
why is dad doing hang loose up to next to his head?
Right.
Something like that. Anyway, but that's what a busy season is. Anytime you have more calls that exceed the normal uh,
Flow rate.
daily
Yeah.
capacity. Okay. And one of the challenges we have is that we tend to want to cut corners and speed up. And I think what we've got to be careful of is in the busy season, whatever that looks like for you, whatever trade you're in, we got to make sure that we are maintaining an even strain, I'll call it. But there's a saying
Sure.
that I always hear associated with racing. It's called, and the saying goes, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Have you ever heard that before?
I've heard that. I heard it was military. I always heard it was military, but not
Well,
racing.
if you look, you can't really find out where it came from because a bunch of people are credited with saying
Sure.
it, uh, but or credited with saying it. But I think what it means to me is if you have a process grooved, okay,
Yeah.
you groove it at a particular speed. And there's
Mhm.
variation where you can go a little slower, a little faster. But anything outside of that, especially if you're trying to speed something up, you inevitably start to cut corners or get out of rhythm on that. And then that is no longer smooth. So you make mistakes or you forget
Yeah.
things and have to go back and those kind of things, which ends up making you go slower, right? So
Sure.
speeding up and cutting corners and making mistakes actually takes you longer time than if you
Right.
slow down and go smooth, you're actually going faster than you think you are, right?
Right.
And
Because you don't
so,
have mistakes. Right.
yeah, and that it's like you hear race car drivers talk about hitting their marks. They hit their
Hmm.
marks. They hit their marks. As long as I'm hitting my marks. Also, you hear like golfers all the time say, "I can only control what I can control, and if I execute, then I'm doing everything I can do." Right?
Yeah.
But the moment they start worrying about everybody else, they start changing their process and their routine, and then
Yeah.
that gets unpredictable. And I think that when we're talking about maintaining standards, well, first of all, what kind of standards are we talking about maintaining? What do you think we're trying to what are the standards you want to maintain in the busy
Well,
season?
excellent standards of effective communication, relationship building, comprehensive analysis and assessment, comprehensive education, presentation of options, and finishing out of work effectively in a timely way, right? But successfully without callbacks. And I think that one of the defining differences is a couple of thoughts here. There is a distinction between efficiency. We have changed the meaning of efficiency to just mean quick, when at its base meaning, efficiency means that there is an increase in pace without a decrease in effectiveness.
Right.
So by virtue of being efficient, we're actually doing the exact same thing just as well, only faster. We have now removed that meaning from efficient and replaced it with speedy. And at its base, at its core, you are not more efficient if you're not achieving the same outcomes, albeit at a faster rate,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
And
that depends
so,
on but see that's where I think the outcome can change. Okay? But let me add something to your standards too. I think just the basic stuff like staying clean, you know?
yeah,
Remember, just because it's the
note
busy
taking,
season doesn't mean you wear a t-shirt, you know?
right,
Just because it's the busy season doesn't mean your truck builds up the week and looks like a dumpster at the end of the day. I mean, at the end of the
right,
week, you know? So there's things like that, those kind of standards. The whatever the company procedure standards are, uh, all that stuff still plays.
right,
And I think, go back to what you were talking about efficiency. I think when you optimize efficiency, you optimize effectiveness in an optimal amount of time, right?
right,
Because I think there comes a point where, for instance, if you're trying to maximize effectiveness alone, it takes forever.
sure,
If you're trying to maximize time or speed alone, then it's not very effective. There's a minimal effectiveness that doesn't hit the minimum standard.
Right.
And so I think there's an optimization that takes place. And now, for those of you that are sitting in your truck and you're like, yeah, well, these guys don't understand. They put 6 and 7 calls on me in a day.
Yeah.
Well, this can be a chicken and an egg argument.
Mm-hmm.
It really can. So, and I don't know if that's an anachronism or not. Hopefully people still know what a chicken and an egg is. And
I don't think it's an anachronism.
You don't think so?
No, I think they're still used. But to be fair, think of it like this. I did have a conversation with an owner who was frustrated with his team for not slowing down, being methodical, doing a diagnostic checklist, presenting options, all this stuff. And he's like, they're just ripping through calls. And I was like, well, let's talk. How many calls did they have yesterday? He's like, well, they had 7. I was like, okay. I mean, given drive time, something's got to give. What's going to give? Quality. I mean, maybe a day process, a day, a week, a guy can do that effectively. But if you stack these guys back to back, you're basically asking to have the process shortcut because those guys don't have the time, focus, or energy to give 100% of themselves for 14 hours straight.
Yeah, that's true. Let's look at a slightly different perspective. And I think what I said earlier about what's the goal? If the goal of the company is to knock the calls out, and if the goal of the technician is to knock the calls out, then what you're saying is minimum effective dose is acceptable, right?
Right.
Which, okay, in some things, yeah, minimal effective dose is enough. Okay. But when you're competing in a marketplace where it's very competitive, right?
Right.
One of the things that happens is speed to the lead, speed to the call, when can you get out there? All that stuff matters. However, I have yet to meet an owner that says, I got to do these 7 calls to knock these calls out, and settles for whatever your trade is, whatever a minimal ticket average is. And so if all of a sudden now you're a plumber and during regular capacity times, your ticket average standard is $1,200.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But if the focus then becomes, well, we got to knock out these calls, and you, instead of doing 3 in a day, you're doing 6 in a day. Right.
Right.
And so if you're doing 6 in a day, your ticket average won't be $1,200. It just won't be, and I would say that if you double the calls, you half the ticket average. Now, that's not a scientific fact. That's just anecdotal, experiential, but that's what happens. And so essentially same revenue in a day,
right?
But the cost is higher to do that.
Yeah.
The risk is doubled.
Well, that's what I was going to say as well is even if you don't have any more as a percentage callbacks than you would when you're doing everything perfectly, you're basically doubling the amount of callbacks by virtue of running double the calls.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so your exposure
it's not a percentage increase, but it's an actual number increase.
It's an absolute increase, yes. Right? So, yeah, your callbacks, the opportunities for what I find, Chris, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this is not that guys are thoughts. Yeah, no kidding. A number of times I talk with guys and I know that they actually don't offer things that they could and probably would sell because it's going to mean they stay on this job another 45 minutes to an hour and they know they need to, and it's just going to delay their time of getting home. So I think it's not just that, oh, we cut our process and item just run it. Sometimes they're making mental choices to say, I don't want to sell this because I got to get through 3 more calls.
Yeah.
And I don't have to sit around and
I know I've done it. Because if I know I sell it, I'm going to have to do it.
Right.
Right. Now I'm
and
not proud.
Okay
I'm not proud of those moments, but there's a phrase you've probably heard me say it before that on a given day, the work expands or contracts to fill the allotted work time.
Sure.
If you think about it, it's just human nature. So if I go to work and I'm a technician and I got 2 calls, they're going to last longer than 2 calls probably should last because I know I don't have anything else to do. I'm probably going to be more thorough, look for more opportunities. But if I go to work and I know I've got 5 calls in a day where I normally run 3, one time I have 2, well, they're probably going to take me closer to how long it would take me to do 3 calls. But if I have 5 calls in a day, that would probably take me closer to the amount of time it takes me to do 3 calls. So
Right.
something has to give.
Yeah.
And so the point is that you got to slow down. You got to stick to your standards, because here's the eventual. And I want to get back to the chicken and egg thing I was talking about.
Okay.
Okay. Well, you're sending me on 6 calls in a day where I'd only run 3. Well, yeah, I'm sending you on 6 calls because you knock out the 3 calls and there's still stuff to do on the board,
Right.
right on the schedule, right? There's another
Right.
anachronism, the board, but on the schedule, right? Because it was physically a board when I was a tech. But
Sure.
so that's the chicken and egg. So the technician may look at it as, well, you are putting so many calls on me. And the company may look at it as like, we're putting calls on you because you knocked those 3 out and we still have more on the schedule to do. And
Yeah.
so what has to happen is both of you, not that
Hmm.
there's sides in this, but both you, the technician, and the company have to realize that if you go slower and you're more effective, you're going to
Hmm.
bring in as much or more revenue on 3 calls as you would going faster on 6 calls. Plus,
Right.
the liability is half.
Right.
The liability is reduced significantly.
Mm.
Which liability of what? Liability of uh, or the chance of having a callback, the chance of getting in a car accident or an accident, the chance
Sure.
of being in a hurry or tired and injuring yourself or damaging property. All those risks are halved when you slow down. So
Right.
slow is smooth and smooth is fast, and that's where that's what we're talking about there, and it goes into efficiency and all the things we talked about. But the second point on it is, in the busy time, whether it's weather induced, whether it's an external reason that the
Mm.
customer is aware of, right?
Right.
It's 100 degrees, or it's been 20 degrees for 3 days in Austin, Texas, right? And now people's externally mounted tankless water heaters are really freezing and busting open on the outside of their house, especially
Right.
when they thaw, whatever. Whether it's everybody understands, okay, it's super hot or it's super cold, or this is in high demand because of some other thing, some external circumstances are driving demand, or whether it's internal circumstances driving demand. I think that in both cases, if it's communicated that our resource is scarce,
Mm.
okay, in one sense, the customer knows it's scarce because it's 100 degrees outside, or it's, you know, 5 degrees, whatever. In another sense, they don't know it's scarce unless we share it with them. I think there's more value in the scarcity,
Sure.
especially when it's most of these times it's externally driven, right? Most of these times
Right.
it's externally driven because there's a weather event, there's some external event that's causing the
Well,
demand.
you've got economic events,
Yeah,
everything from inflations to tariffs to whatever that's creating conversations,
absolutely.
454B refrigerant conversations with AC.
Yep.
There's a lot of external things.
So that when it comes to the external reasons for demand to surge, I think there's more value in that time, because I think, contrast it with normal capacity or even diminished capacity times. Maybe you're only doing 1 or 2 calls a day where you normally do 3 or 4. Compare that now when you could do 5 or 6 calls in a day, but instead you're doing the 3 or 4 that you normally do, even though it's busy, but you're being more thorough. I think what you're going to find is not because you are better at selling things. I think the customer's awareness of the scarcity and the urgency and the
Yeah.
consequences are
Of
more
not doing
apparent.
something.
They're
Oh,
more
yeah,
apparent.
for sure.
So the things that you are recommending intrinsically have more value to them in those times.
Right.
Okay. And that goes with what you were saying. If you're not offering the things, then you're not availing yourself of the opportunity of that, where the customer is more likely to agree to something, to do something because of the circumstances, not because you twisted their arm or you manipulated them. It's just that, when are people thinking about a surge protector on an air conditioning system? Oh, when the storms rolled through at 3:00 in the morning and they blew out a circuit board because there was a lightning strike close to the house.
Sure.
We can't prove that for certain, but we certainly can see there was a lightning strike. The storm rolled through. During that storm, the system was working, and then it stopped. Right?
Well, I mean, mathematically, it's the difference between maintenance calls and service calls, and that even if you offer the exact same items on a maintenance
Yeah.
call, fundamentally, there's just a lack of givenness to that at that time,
Well,
because
there's a lack of
external and internal circumstances,
urgency. There's
urgency.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've seen it. I don't care if it's HVAC, electrical, whatever else. Apart from, and then once people, there's that pot committed component, which is,
Yeah.
I'm already in for $3,000. Let me just go ahead and make it for 4,500, wrap it up into a,
Whatever.
financing, and
Yeah.
get it all at once. Right.
Yep.
So I think we all understand it. And in fact, Chris, I don't think this conversation is honestly something that's new
No.
to people. I think what it is when the rubber meets the road and I want to be home to go to my son's baseball game or something like that. And my only way of doing that is to finish out this call or whatever. It's that we don't feel like it's worth it enough to stay loyal or faithful to a process.
Well, but I agree with you there. I'm not disagreeing with you at all, but I want to point out something else. I think that the third point that goes into this is you got to over communicate. Okay. I think what happens as a technician, because I can tell you how my attitude was early on in my career, and I've seen other technicians that think this, and then I saw the light and realized it, and I've seen plenty of other technicians see the light and realize it, that unless you can't assume boundaries with your time, you can't assume that. How many times have you heard, "Oh, these guys don't want to run calls because, whatever." I'm like, and don't they realize that they're in the service trades? You have to run on call on weekends and stuff like that.
Right.
Well, if you're listening to your owner, don't assume those boundaries or the lack of those boundaries. And if you're a technician, don't assume the boundaries or the lack of boundaries. Because I think a lot of times, I know when I was younger, I went into it as, okay, well, I work 8 to 5. I'm willing to get there at 7 to load my truck or get my parts or whatever and then go. But hey, I shouldn't be doing anything after 5 o'clock, and they should know that.
Yeah.
Well, I think there is an understanding, a general understanding, that anytime external forces cause demand to surge, then you're going to be needed a little more. Right. But I feel like, especially the owners we work with, if it was communicated, I need to go to my son's baseball game on Thursday nights and they start at 6 o'clock, I have to be there. I'd like to be there. If there was a communication that happened, then the majority of the time it wouldn't be an issue.
Sure.
But we can't assume those boundaries. We can't assume that understanding. And so I think you have to over communicate when there's a surge in demand. You have to over communicate. I heard somebody say one time, I'm trying to think who it was. I think I was listening to a Bible study podcast, and the guy that was talking said, expectations can turn into future resentments, especially if they're not communicated. Right?
That's good. Yeah.
And so I think that's where we can have a disconnect, is if we're not communicating during the busy season or the surge in demand that, hey, these are some personal commitments that I have to keep, and you have to be flexible. You're asking for flexibility on that. But the reciprocation is that you're expected to be a little flexible at other times too, right?
Right.
But where I see the friction happen in the busy season is where neither the company and owners, managers, whoever that is, call by call managers, dispatchers, whoever it is, if that person and the technician aren't communicating clearly on expectations in the moment, that's where resentments happen.
Sure.
And that's where we get off track. And that's where we have this mismatch of, okay, I'm going to knock out, they're going to put 6 calls on me, so I got to knock them out fast as I can to get to my son's baseball game. Or, well, James he's just knocking these calls out, so keep putting them on him because we got to get these things done. But if there's a communication in that, real time, there's communication. Yeah. And I say real time, but really, if you communicate in advance as much as possible, I think what we find is everybody's willing to work to achieve the goal of taking care of the customers, right? Maximizing the opportunity, sticking to the standards, because, and I've coined a phrase.
Oh, do tell.
Are you ready for this?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Alex, I don't know if this is a trumpet fanfare or what, but I've coined a phrase. The phrase is schedule trust.
Whoa. What does that mean?
I don't know. I just like the way it's no. Schedule trust is this. The schedule trust exists between a technician and the company when the technician can trust that the personal commitments they've communicated will be honored to the best of the ability of the schedule and the company to do so. That's not a blanket, oh, oops, we forgot it this week. No, that's not what that is. Sure. But the technician has scheduled trust when they know, okay, the personal commitments that I've communicated will be honored to the best of the ability of the company. Schedule trust exists with the individuals that are in control of the schedule, dispatchers, call-by-call managers, service managers, owners, ops managers, whoever. That schedule trust exists when they trust that whatever's scheduled for the technician is accepted, that they're going to do it because they have communicated the boundaries. They've communicated the commitments. That's when schedule trust exists. And I'll tell you where schedule trust really first gets either made or broken. Okay?
Yeah.
Schedule trust can be made or broken, especially on call. Now, we didn't set out to talk about on call in this, but I think it fits when we're talking about, demand and surge, because that's when you see it most of the time. I mean, most of the time, plumbing, yes. Plumbing, you're going to have emergency calls any time of the year if there is, I'm going to say it, Alex, I'm going to say the P word here. Okay, you ready? You think you can handle the P word, James?
I'm cautiously optimistic.
Water or poop are somewhere they shouldn't be, that's an emergency. Yeah. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, that could happen anytime. Okay?
Yeah, with me especially. Keep going.
All right. Electrical, not sure what an emergency would be in electrical. And I know we take care of maintenance customers and that kind of thing, but what's an emergency in electrical? Because if something has smoke coming out of it, fire department. If something's too hot to touch, fire department.
Right.
First, right? Then the electrician gets involved. HVAC, what's an emergency? Well, that depends on who defines the emergency. And really, that depends on who defines the emergency in all of these cases. Does the company define the emergency, or does the customer define the emergency? And so schedule trust happens, it begins there when the company defines the emergency and then sticks to that when the calls come in.
I actually like that. I'm going to give you another place I think schedule trust starts, and I think it's in maintenance season.
Okay.
As in, often we don't have a bunch of calls. We're trying to get guys out there. We don't have a bunch of calls that we're running. Say we're an electrical company. We got 2 or 3 calls today, right? And I'm going to try to get calls scheduled out there. But even when you as a technician are going through the process, you're not actually following the process that we're asking you to. Literally, there's nothing else that we're asking of you. Just follow the
Yeah,
process. There's no demand season. And 11:35 rolls around and they're finished up their third call. They haven't done any checklists. They haven't done any nothing. And they're sitting there going, "Are you going to give me more calls or can I go home?" And there's this place of where there can be a drag on the owner saying, like, guys, we don't have a whole bunch of calls. We're not making a bunch of money right now. At the very least, just be excellent with the calls that are in front of you
yes,
and fill out your work day.
yes,
And I think that that is the yin attached to the yang they're wanting back from the owners to give them consideration, because basically you can't have your cake and eat it too if
that's
you're a
right.
technician.
I knew the yin and yang would come in here sooner or later. I just didn't expect it to take
Yin
so long.
yang.
Whatever. But I think schedule trust is a big part of the relationship that a technician has with the company and the company has with the technician. And when I say it that way, realize I'm not trying to put an adversarial component to this, you against the company. That's not it. But the fact remains is the company makes commitments that the technician has to keep, right?
Agreed.
And they've made an agreement that the technician is going to follow the process of the company when they go do those things. Now, let me speak to owners for a minute. Owners, if you let standards slip, then don't expect your team to uphold standards, right?
Right.
When it gets busy or when we have a surge in demand or even on call. So I think those are the things. So if we maintain our standards in these situations, in slow is smooth and smooth is fast. That's stick to the process. If it takes 2 hours on a normal day, it takes 2 hours in the busy season. That's just the way it is. Okay. Are you going to do a couple extra calls? Yep, you are. That's what's going to happen. Number two, there's more value in what you're offering inherently during a surge in demand that's caused by external circumstances that the customers are well aware of. Okay. There's more intrinsic value in what you're offering. And like you said, it's kind of the difference between a maintenance call and a service call. Maintenance call, you're offering these things. There's no urgency. Maybe there's no demand, et cetera. It's a little harder. But in the middle of demand season or that external circumstance that's causing a surge in demand, there's more value in those things. There's more urgency, right?
Right.
So there's more value in the busy season. And the third thing is, if you want to build that schedule trust, or if it's right now it's lacking, or you want to strengthen it, both sides have to over communicate in the busy season. Many times for me, if you told me in the morning that, and I know this is going to go against some, one call at a time, dispatching, all that kind of stuff. But if you told me in the morning, you're going to end up taking a couple of extra calls today because of the demand, and we realized that, tomorrow is the day you said you got to be at your kids' baseball games by 6 o'clock, so you need to be out of here by 5. Today, we're probably going to ask you to take a few more calls. If you told me that in the morning and I could say, hey, babe, I'm going to be taking a couple extra calls this evening, but I'm going to be able to go to the baseball games and everything tomorrow night, no problem. You got me. I'm good.
Yeah.
That's schedule trust right there. That's what that is.
Nice. I like it.
And so I think that over communicating is what helps build schedule trust. And then both parties have to be willing to stick to it.
Right.
So if you're doing 6 calls in a day and you know that, and that's just what's going to happen, you do all 6 calls like you're only doing 1 call that day. Right? And if you've communicated a need or a boundary that just has to be honored, commitment that has to be honored, and you've done it well in advance and you've done it multiple times, then the company should honor that. And so I think that's how we maintain standards in the busy season, if we change our mentality about it and understand those 3 points. So if, as always, friends and neighbors, if you want to talk to me and learn more about this, You can contact me at Elmore at servextra.com, SERVEXTRA.com, or 254-733-7109 on the mobile communication device, either text or call. If you would like to speak to James Walker,
254-230-5266 or James at servextra.com.
Okay. James, remotely and from about 110 miles away, tell me, what do we do here?
At Service Excellence, Chris, we turn learning into earning.
Yes, we do. Thank you, J-Dub. Bye,
That
everybody.
works.